All right. Well, thank you guys for coming to my presentation. I'm going to be presenting to you today a little bit more on exactly what's happening with Jeanette here. Does that sound good, Caitlin?
Yes, that sounds great.
How does that sound, Jeanette?
Sounds good.
All right. So, addiction is a disease. It's a disease that is chronically relapsing and it's of the brain. So, it's sort of like diabetes type 2, like cancer and heart disease. It's chronic, it's here to stay, and it's something that you're going to have to deal with the rest of your life. Disease is defined by an abnormal condition which causes dysfunction, discomfort, or distress in the individual. So, brain changes associated with repeated drug use restrict the addicted person's ability to refrain freely from the drug use. So, once you've had that substance, your body is going to want it, it's going to crave it. And essentially, what happens is that that substance hijacks the brain reward system. It's no longer going to function normally as it does before you had the substance ingested. So there are a multitude of things going on when we're looking at addiction. There's biological, environmental, genetic, and neurological sources of origin. So all these components contribute up to what makes up the disease addiction. And there is a genetic predisposition. Up to 50% of genetics are attributable to the development of addiction. So it's in your genes. So what we have here is how the addiction manifests itself. You have an organ, which is the brain in this case. And then you have a defect. The defect can range anywhere from, your genetic predisposition to you ingesting it, to you wanting it more and more of the substance. And then your symptoms are what the behaviors that you've been portraying, Jeanette. The constantly seeking out the alcohol, constantly, sneaking around trying to get more of it. Those are symptoms manifesting itself, and to show the problem is lying within the brain. So there's a triangle going on of exactly the factors of going on. What is addiction and the disease of addiction? You have a genetic component, which we mentioned already, can be up to 50% attributable to your addiction. You have a neurochemical stuff that's going on in your brain, along with the social environmental, the people that surround yourself, the situations that you put yourself in. This trifecta all makes up the components that make addiction so dangerous and deadly. So you have different things going on. You have historical, your past history, previous history. You have, expectations and things that you've learned around your environment of what's okay, what's not okay, what you've learned from your mother, what she's learned from you. You have the drugs, you have the biological, the genetics, circadian rhythms, disease states, and gender. All these things play a factor into your brain mechanisms. And then when addiction is factored in, you have to realize that there is a component that is environmental, that it comes from family, from stress, from conditioned stimuli, and social interactions. So what we're looking at here is the brain of a moderate drinker versus the brain of an alcoholic. Now, the brain of an alcoholic, you're seeing there's gaps here, and these are chemical processes that are happening and functions that are happening in the brain, but it's absent. You'll see less of that in the alcoholic compared to the moderate drinker because of the damage that the alcohol has done to the brain over time. In the frontal cortex, that's exactly where all your thinking comes through. That's your more modern brain, decision-making, personality, and things like that. So what we're looking at here is metabolism rate. You'll see this in terms of a heart. Of course, people can always say, definitely for a heart, you can see that there's disease and things going on, but addiction functions a little bit differently. For the healthy heart, you have activity going on right here, but the diseased heart, you see the amount of decreased activity and a flood of very basic activity that's not healthy, it's diseased. Whereas here, you're going to see for a control group for the brain versus one of the caffeine user. So the activity, you see more and more purple, more and more black, is because activity has gone down. And that's not a healthy brain. That's not what you're going to want in future years. So how does all this affect the family? Alcohol and other drugs can be, it's not just a disease of the individual, it's a disease of the family. It affects the entire household. It can affect your mental health, your physical health, your finances, your family dynamics. It affects all of that. You've seen in your interactions with each other, how things have deteriorated over time because of your use, Jeanette. That can be attributed to the alcohol use. Family members who aren't addicted, they could become codependent. And codependency is defined as the maladaptive relationships between the addicted person and another person where there exists enabling. And we define enabling as knowingly behaving in such a manner to make it possible for that person to continue to abuse the chemical or substance that they're abusing. So, Caitlin, you may have been, helping clean up, helping Jeanette when she has her hangovers, and not allowing her to feel the full effects of what happens when you drink excessively. Those can be considered some enabling behaviors. Children of addicts, also are affected genetically and environmentally. So this is something you have to keep in mind, that could potentially be passed on to your future generations. So what to do? I mean, all that sounds pretty depressing and despairing, right? But there is hope. Couple things in order to do to make sure you don't fall back into relapse. You need to stay active. Know your family history. There's a genetic component to it. You need to keep that in the forefront of your mind. You need to reduce stress because stress is a leading cause of relapse. You need to develop positive coping strategies. Instead of turning to the alcohol all the time, try and find something else. Exercise. Call somebody. Take proactive measures to use other things besides just drinking. Get treatment when needed. It's great that you're here right now. That's a positive step in the right direction. And stick to treatment regimens. What you learn here is something that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. You have to keep working at it and keep going at it. So relapse prevention. Continued. So for your situation, Jeanette, we have you going through individual and group therapy. We do some AA meetings here, but continuing AA meetings outside of here is going to be crucial to maintaining your sober support network. Medication maintenance, and you speak with your psychiatrist more in detail regarding this, but keeping up with the Camprol, keeping up with the Contrave or naltrexone, those will definitely help you a lot with your cravings. Family counseling, it's great that your mother, Caitlin, is here supporting you. It's really awesome, and it's super crucial and helpful. So, and again, trigger maintenance, finding out what your triggers are, making sure you're able to maintain them. Relaying it back to the positive coping mechanisms. If you find out a trigger, have a plan in place in order to deal with those triggers so you're not just grasping for things to do. That can lead up for potential relapse. And additionally, avoidance. Avoid the places where you used to use. Avoid other addicts. Avoid the bars and the clubs and places where using is common. These are going to be crucial in you being able to maintain your sobriety. So, are there any questions?
No, thank you for explaining all of that to me. It makes me feel better knowing that I have some education behind it.
All right.